Welcome back to Indie Author Blueprint. Today we're going to be talking about contracts. Contracts play a significant role in self-publishing, and understanding the terms is essential for protecting your rights as an author and for ensuring fair compensation. We're going to talk about what authors need to know. Now, when it comes to contracts, there's a difference between the contracts you sign as a self-published author and the ones that a traditionally published author might sign. First, a traditionally published author might sit down and actually sign a contract with an agent who's going to represent them. And so there's a very detailed contract there. And then after that person pitches their book different places and gets them a publishing deal, there's a whole agreement that they negotiate and navigate, and that person signs. So you might see pictures of somebody signing a contract to publish their book, and they might put up pictures on their social media. That's very different because when you're self-publishing, you're not signing an agreement with yourself. So what kind of agreements might a self-published author need to sign? Well, first, if you're going with a self-publishing platform, like you're hiring somebody to do all the work and you just want them to, finish the book and get it out there for you, well, you're probably going to sign an agreement with them that says all that they're doing, all the deliverables, and what you're paying for. But if you're doing it all yourself, there are contracts you might have to sign as well. There might be some for your publishing platform, and these are actually very simple. They're not like the 20-page contract that you would have, but when you're getting down to that point where you're publishing the book, there are some boxes you have to tick that say, I own the rights to this content. I didn't steal it from somebody else. I didn't use any brand names in here. I agree to these terms. They're simple, and yet that's part of publishing the book. So you may not sign them, but you might be digitally clicking on buttons that are part of understanding that agreement. That will also include royalty rates, distribution, and all of the things that are part of publishing on something like Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark. You always want to read that fine print because when you're doing that and you're putting a book out there, you're following their terms. This is different from a contract you sit down and sign that has been legally negotiated specifically for you. Now, there might be some, and those are related to things like distribution. Perhaps you're going with a distributor that's going to get your book out there in places that you can't with just plain KDP. So maybe you're using something like Draft to Digital, you're using Smashwords or something like that. And you get into this contract that says how your book's going to be distributed across different platforms. It talks about your fees, the royalties, exclusivity, all of that kind of thing. And so you want to know what's in that contract. How long am I locked into that? Can I also distribute in another area? And so these always bring up questions. And it's more of a work agreement, this kind of contract. It's not a publishing agreement. It's for distribution. You might also sign a contract with somebody that you've hired to do publicity and marketing for you, and they will spell out what the deliverables are, when they will do them. And so you're signing an agreement that they're going to do this and you're going to pay them this much money for that. Along those lines, there are some for editing and design. So I'm a freelance editor, a freelance cover designer, and typesetter, formatter. And so when I work with authors, I have a whole contract that spells out what I'm going to do for them and what that includes. It spells out what they're responsible for. It spells out how much each of those things will be, what happens if we decide to break the agreement along the way. It'll specifically say that I get paid for the amount of work I've already done. So I use a tracker and I know what my hours are. It says when it will be done, and it will say what those dates are when everything has to be back and forth. It's basically like a work for hire kind of agreement, just saying I'll do this for you and you'll pay this much money. It's like 5 pages long because we have to spell out all the legal details, even though I'm not their publisher. I'm the person who's working on their team as a freelancer. So as you look at these contracts and you look at terms and you use independent services, there's not a lot of negotiating. It's not like it is with traditional publishing where you're hiring somebody like your agent to negotiate the terms and everything. It's pretty straightforward. It's just saying these are your rights and these are my rights. And anytime you have a question about something you have to sign, you can always go for legal advice. You can always consult with an industry expert to make sure that you get through those effectively. So a lot of times it's just reading the contract. I've had a lot of clients that I think don't read the fine print, and it's very helpful if you just read it so that you understand what you're signing. I'm already covered in a previous episode a little bit about exclusivity, but it is important when you're signing a contract to make sure that you understand your rights. You, as an indie author, self-published author, should retain all rights and control of your book. And so you want to make sure that that's spelled out in a contract. I spell that out as a freelancer, saying, I have no rights to your work. This is yours. You are publishing it. You should be very aware that you're not giving away the rights to your book. If you're publishing with a platform, like say they're going to distribute and they're going to put their logo on the back of your book as the publisher, you need to know, how long is this agreement for? There are some of them that say, well, we have the rights to your book for a year. Now, you still own the content, but we have the rights to publish it and distribute it for this year. You pay for it. It's all still indie. But read that to make sure that you know you're not giving up the rights to the future of your book content. Know what the long-term impact is. Know how they affect your ability to explore other distribution channels or work with other partners. Is this exclusive to this one, or can I do this and this? One example for me that I use with my own books is I use Amazon KDP to distribute books only to Amazon with some of them. And then I use Ingram Spark to distribute my books to all the other online book platforms. And they could be in print in stores if a bookstore ordered them as well. And so I need to know that these two can work together, but I cannot check a box on Amazon and also check a box on Ingram Spark to equally distribute them to the same places. I can't send them to Barnes & Noble from both places. It's either or. And so when I'm looking at those terms of those agreements, it's important to just understand how one impacts the other. Contracts should always have a clause for termination. I mentioned that mine have that, where what happens if something happens? What happens if I pay a down payment and I have to pull this book and I'm not publishing it anymore, but somebody already designed the cover? Well, you owe them for that. Unless they broke the contract, then you don't. I'm not giving legal advice here, by the way. You have to consult with your own legal advice. But you do have to understand what happens. If you break the contract or they break that, what happens? Do they still get paid for this much of it? How does that work? So that should be spelled out in any contract that you work up with somebody that you're hiring. What are the best practices then for managing your contracts? Well, first off, educate yourself. Understand the terms, understand the agreements. Use the resources that are out there, industry blogs, author forums, publishing guides, and look for the insights that they have. You might be surprised to know that Ingram Spark and Amazon KDP have extensive libraries of guides that you can use that answer the questions. And there are also author forums and there are Facebook groups, and you can ask a lot of questions from people who have been through it before. Do your research so that you make sure you understand if you're even getting good advice or not, but do that educating part. The people who do that are so much more successful than people who want somebody to spoon feed them everything. If you go out there and do the work, you're going to end up with a better agreement and a better contract for your book when it comes to hiring professionals that you work with. Also, when dealing with complex contracts or anything that you're concerned about, seek advice from a publishing lawyer or an industry expert. I happen to have a service. I pay for a monthly fee to have access to a lawyer who I can ask quick questions of. It's a small fee. It's not as much as having a lawyer on retainer, and yet it's a subscription-based legal program, and it just helps me to feel comfortable. If I have a question, I can ask those. And so it helps if you have those people where you can ask questions. Now, by understanding then how agreements work and how contracts work, it helps you to make informed decisions that essentially enhance your publishing success, and it protects you along the way. Contracts are there to help you know what to expect, for you to know how to look back and see what did we agree on and when is this due, all of those kinds of things. And it also allows you to make sure that you are protected. This is just scratching the surface of what could be covered, but I hope it's helped you to understand what kinds of contracts you might be signing and using as an indie author. I'll be back next time with another episode. If you're looking for practical worksheets that go with some of the past episodes, those are all on Substack. Just look for Indie Author Blueprint. You'll see that some of them are available only for paid subscribers. It's only $8 a month. If you want to subscribe, you get access to everything I've ever put out, even the ones that are past. And so it's really nice for you to be able to just grab that and have access to that. You'll find that again at Indie Author Blueprint on Substack.